1. My girlfriend and I had been living in our new apartment approximately 3 or 4 months at the time of this story. For clarification and background, we live in a basement-level unit. The one and only entrance is inside the building and down the stairs. However, there's 4 windows facing nothing but a row of shrubbery and tree line. It was roughly 9 or 10 p.m. She was at work for the evening, and I had the place to myself. Lights on and TV blasting, I was sitting in the living room planning on eating trashy and binge-watching the remaining episodes of Broad City. Not long into it, however, I heard a scraping sound from the bathroom. My first thought? A mouse? Which was the last thing we needed. So I get up and make my way through the hallway as quietly as I can to catch a glimpse of it. The closer I got, the more I realized the scratching wasn't coming from the bathroom, but rather the window in the master bedroom. My next guess was it was simply kids playing outside, as they tend to. Or the bunny I had seen bouncing out there that morning. Even more likely, someone taking a dog out to pee. I paused, tried to hone my hearing, and only then noticed it wasn't a sound from outside, but rather scratching on the window itself. I started into the bedroom when I noticed the sound stopped, and moved to the adjacent window in the room next to it. A smaller bedroom that gave us the creeps as is. We never used it. There's no light source, it simply sits dark and empty aside from a few boxes of my clothing. Now thinking back, it was probably a bad idea. I'm a small girl, maybe 5'2", 90 pounds, soaking wet. But I do have a bit of spirit and a tad bit of temper. I had hoped that on being discovered, whomever it was, obvious to me now that it was someone and not something, would run off. I had caught him red-handed. So I steeled myself and yelled out, "I hear you! What do you want?" The scratching stopped instantly. I waited. After what felt like an eternity, I assumed the coast was clear. I made my way to the windowsill and slowly cracked open the blinds. I don't know why I did. Because there he crouched, peering into me with the widest and wildest eyes I've ever seen on a person, most certainly strung out on something. He told me to let him in. As shocked as I was, I almost laughed at the audacity, as if I was just going to swing open the window and let him waltz in. Using the remaining courage I had mustered, I tell him not so gently, "No, get the fuck away from my house." He again told me to let him in, to which I informed him I was calling the police, and hurriedly proceeded to do just that. I even turned the telephone to face him for added effect, hoping this act would scare him and intimidate him, anything to get this man to leave. Unfortunately, it had the opposite effect. He was seething, raging, and practically foaming at the mouth. He drew back and punched the window hard, repeatedly slamming his fists and palms against the glass. The window started cracking, blood filling up like a gore-filled movie effect. I was out of there fast, heart racing, slamming the door shut behind me, so tempted to run out the front door but incredibly scared that he would just come around the front of the building. Torn and trapped, I picked up the nearest blunt object and placed myself in between the 2 doors. I figured whichever one moved first, I'd go out the other. I still had the phone in my ear, urging the 911 operator to get someone here fast. In my panicked state, I also feared for my girlfriend who would be coming home soon. I messaged her, warning her about what was going on. Eventually sirens and a pounding came to the front door. The police had arrived. I explained what had happened, and they searched the apartment and area near the window, coming back with a set of keys that he had possibly dropped, but no sign of him other than the broken window. They took a sample from the blood spatter on what was left of the glass. My girlfriend came home shortly after, having left work early and calling the police herself. I'm grateful she did. Maintenance had been notified, and they threw up a temporary boarding until it could be repaired. They never actually found the guy. Or if they did, I never received any updates about it. Definitely didn't get any sleep that night. Has anyone else been in a similar situation? How did you react? 2. This happened a few months back while I was still living in Georgia. I have recently moved to Vermont because of this issue, and I am now ready to tell my little story. Once upon a time, I was at the library alone while using Wi-Fi. My girlfriend was at home a few blocks down the road. I had already planned on messaging her when I was ready to be picked up. I didn't have a phone at the time, so I needed Facebook to help me out. Little did I know the library closed early on Fridays. I guess in the grand scheme I should have checked. Anyhow, when the library is about to close, they cut the Wi-Fi off about 10 minutes prior. So when I sent the pickup message, it was declined, basically. I didn't freak out too much because I figured she would get worried and come find me in a few minutes anyway. I decided to step outside and have a cig while I waited. That's where I fucked up. To my left was an old man who I had seen around the small town here and there. A few times at the Rite Aid and dollar store. Most of the time I ignore him because he seems a bit, out of it. His face is always dirty around the mouth, and he never seems to speak coherently. He'll just walk up to you and say something like, "Hey, have you tried my new book?" Something off the wall. Could be old age, or he could just be a little slow. Either way, he seemed harmless most of the time. So anyway, I spot him and nod my head, saying hi. He says something off the wall to me, and I just smile and pretend to know what he's talking about. He even hands me a pamphlet about Jesus. I just accept it, and try to start walking home. He follows me. I told him to stay there and wait for me, in hopes that something would click in his mind and cause him to stop. He didn't. So I turn back and go into the library. They were closed, but the door still let me in. I walk over and wave the old lady down. Mrs. Helen, I call her. I tell her that he was following me. This badass little old grandma lady marches right out there and tells him he better find somewhere else to be. No fear. She explains to me that he might not know what he's doing. I agree to that and tell her it just freaked me out is all. I'm a woman. Having a strange man follow you is off-putting. I chalk it up to that and start walking away. I look back to see if that man had followed. In some ways, he was. He was on the other side of the parking lot staring at me. At first I ignored it, but when I looked back, he was still staring. And he did the thing. 2 fingers. Gestures then at his eyes and then at me. "I'm watching you." That's what that was. Now tell me, does he not know what he's doing? Is he just some weird old man with dementia? I don't know. A week goes by. I decide we need some junk food from the store. I walk that way, and as I cross the tracks, I notice something. That man. I was roughly a block from my house when I spot him. What does he do when he sees me? "I'm watching you." The hair on the back of my neck stands. I do my best to ignore it and keep walking. I'm almost sprinting by the time I get to the store. I worked there, so I knew everyone. I call out to Pam, my manager. I beg her to tell this man to get the fuck out when he walks in. He would be right behind me. Sure enough, there he was a few moments later. She asked him if he needed something, and he says, "Her. I need her. She needs to come to Jesus." Pam threw him out. Thank you, second mama. I was scared to walk home, so I called the girlfriend and told her what's up. She came and got me. Sure enough, he was waiting outside the store when she pulled up. I've never been so freaked out. So far. A few days go by and my stupid ass thinks, hey, why not go work in the yard instead of sitting in the house freaking out about weird Jesus guy? I head outside after getting myself a beer and hooking up my music to our big speaker. I set things up on the porch, then look out toward the road. I never shot beer out of my nose. Guys, it fucking hurts. There that old man was, standing in the ditch watching me. You can't make this shit up. I call out for my girlfriend, and here she comes. When she saw him, she grabbed her phone and called the cops. They pick him up, and the drama subsides for about a month. I didn't see him anywhere. I thought it was over. Life was getting back to normal. Chickens, you've been counted, but you haven't hatched yet. This never ends well. Just when I thought I would never see him again, just when he had left my mind, just when the anxiety of him finding me was gone, he was back. I was at Rite Aid getting some junk food for the house when I saw him come in. I actually ducked. I fucking ducked behind the aisle end cap because I'm a scared little girl with a problem. I've never been so ashamed of myself. People were staring at me. Randy, the guy behind the counter, asked if I was okay, and I told him how this guy was following me and harassing me. He wouldn't stop, and I knew if he saw me, he would start up again. I crawled across the floor and made my way out the doors before he spotted me. I ran all the way home like an idiot. I told my girlfriend what happened, and she offered to call the cops again. I told her not to because in the long run he hadn't done anything to me yet. I made it a point as I went around town to watch, take note of every corner, look all around me as I headed to the store or library or wherever. Every once in a while I would see him and he would see me, and he would make that hand gesture. He was always watching me. I had also informed locals about my issue with him. Some of them told me not to worry so much. Others shared similar issues with him. One girl, Madison, who I worked with, she told me how he would follow her around. He had been up until he started following me around. So he had moved on, it seemed. While I was happy for her that she was free, I was terrified for myself. Now I know what you guys are sitting here doing. What the frick? Why did you skip states just to get away from this guy? Here's why. He broke into my house, guys. He let himself right in after breaking a window. We were out and about when this happened. When we got home, I felt something was off, but brushed it aside. The two of us put up groceries, then got started on dinner. By this time, I was a wreck. I kept feeling like something was off. When I went into our room, my shit hit the fan. Just my shit. All of it. Like I shit and threw it at the box fan. There was that goddamned old man asleep in our bed. He had already urinated on it. We called the cops, and he went away for a good while. We decided changing states was a good idea. I just never wanted to risk seeing him again. He went as far as to break in and sleep in our bed. Next time he finds me, he was gonna kill me, I just knew it. So we hopped, skipped, and jumped. It was time anyway. So, creepy Jesus dude. Yeah. Hope you're still in jail or whatever. Let's never meet again. 3. This was an experience I had alongside my BFF in high school. This was about 2006, maybe 2007, in rural upstate New York. We met in 3rd grade and are still friends to this day. We are both 27 now. Let me give you some background information. My friend B and I became instant friends when we met in 3rd grade, and were inseparable. We frequented each other's homes so much that her mom set up her guest room as my room. I had toys, clothes, pictures. I mean, everything I needed was there. I was family. Pictures of B and I hung on the walls of the home owned by her very proud mother, Shelley. Shelley always wanted 2 daughters and loved me so much that she considered me her second daughter. Now on to the meat of the story. Again, this incident took place when B and I were sophomores in high school. Her mother was divorced and dated a few different men, meeting some off-sites like eHarmony. She had been speaking to a man for a few weeks, gushing about how manly and charming he was. She was really excited and always showed us their profiles before she decided to go on an actual date with one of these men. She always would say, "I need my daughter's stamps of approval." One night she called us to her room and showed us this man she had been talking about. His profile was simple, as one would imagine for a middle-aged man in 2007 on eHarmony. The headline read, "Looking for a strong mother." I made a joke about his odd placement for caps, and just how strange a way to start out, but we moved forward. It told of his metalwork background, his love of cold steel, and his work in a foundry that kept his icy heart just warm enough. I was honest and told her it sounded off, but he was handsome. Sporting black, well-groomed hair, a beard, strong jaw, ice blue eyes, and relatively fit body for a 40-something-year-old male. I did stress on the weird vibe, then B joked how Shelley always picked out the antisocial ones. And we laughed, knowing this wasn't wrong. Shelley brought some weird stories home. But what do you expect meeting men online? We told her to go for it, so they planned on dinner. It was a haul for him, about a 2-hour drive. He was driving to our location where they would then take one car into town. B and I helped Shelley pick out her outfit, helped her with her hair and makeup, and then went back upstairs where B and I were painting a wall in her room. Just listening to music and cutting up. He let himself in the house like no big deal and just came upstairs without saying a word. No knocking, no doorbell. The dogs didn't bark, nothing. So we get spooked, jump, scream and shit our pants a little while we hear a man start talking behind us. We don't know how long he had been in the house, we don't know how long he stood behind us without speaking. But when he did speak, we shook. Well, I didn't know I was getting a 2-for-1 deal, he said quietly in a gravelly, low voice. He chuckled as we stood there in shock of the stranger in her room. He sauntered over to us like a man on a Sunday walk. The smell of cigarettes filled the room, as if Rod Sterling himself was standing in the corner explaining our situation to the audience for our own personal episode of The Twilight Zone. Right then I noticed how much this guy looked like the guy in the picture Shelley showed us, except he had salt and pepper, not jet black hair. And his eyes were not ice blue, but black, not brown, black. It looked like this guy was 100% pupil. Are you... I was interrupted by Shelley shouting, "Who got hurt?" She must have thought we were horsing around and one of us got hurt. This was normal for us because we goofed around a lot. She was jolted at the sight of this man blocking her from us. He turned around just as she was reaching the top of the stairs and held his arms out and said, in a way less low tone than he used earlier, "Shelley, you look beautiful. I knocked and no one answered. I hope it's okay I let myself in. These are your girls. They're beautiful like their mommy." I'll never forget how he said mommy. It felt dirty. B and I both side-eyed each other and stepped down off our step-ladders. We were both very in tune with each other. If I felt weird, I knew she did. And we both felt the odd air of the room. Shelley glanced away from him and at us, who were behind him, looking at her with wide eyes, both kind of shaking our heads side to side in disbelief. Shelley looked back to him. This exchange only took a few seconds but seemed like an eternity. She forced a smile at him and said, "Oh, I'm sorry, just next time ring the bell. I'll come open the door." He nodded and walked towards her with open arms and hugged her like they had been the oldest of friends. She looked at us as they hugged and just kind of rolled her eyes to show us what she thought of his excuse. She proceeded to tell him that it was not appropriate as she led him down the stairs. We heard him apologize over and over. B and I instantly ran to our phones. We agreed to text her mom what he had just said to us so we could tell her, without him knowing. We hit send, and about 10 minutes later we hear footsteps up the stairs. It was Shelley. And she shut the door behind her and asked us if we were okay. She hugged us and told us she was sorry he had made us feel uncomfortable. She explained to us that he said we reminded him of his girls and didn't mean to scare us. We nodded, and then she said they were leaving out for the date. We hugged her, said be safe, and we would see her soon. As she headed down the stairs, B and I looked at each other. We both knew that something was not right. But were both speechless from the good scare we received from this dark man just about 15 minutes prior. We heard them walking and talking towards the front door a few minutes later. Shelley shouted up the stairs that she loved us. We yelled back that we loved her. And then the door shut. We instantly started talking over each other, saying the same things. B spoke over me. "He laid that charm on so thick as soon as he saw Mom," B exclaimed further. "Did you see his eyes? What the fuck was that? He looked so much like the guy from the pictures, but not exactly." We both concurred in our feelings about the stranger, his scent, his demeanor, his voice. He was like something out of a classic stranger danger advert. Again, we agreed to text Shelley how we felt. She thanked us and told us it seemed to be going well, and she would let us know that she was safe every hour. Bea and I were just freaked out, and even more so that Shelley was not. It was like a weird spell he cast on her. It was odd, but we wanted to think the best for Shelley, and she was excited about this guy. She texted us every hour until she got home. Her last text said, "I'm okay, but officially freaked out and coming home now. Be home soon." We got freaked and paced around until we saw headlights pull into the driveway. It had been about 5 hours since she left, and about an hour since the last text. We were inside with the lights off, watching through the side window, trying not to be seen, when the motion sensor light flooded the yard and light fell onto the driveway. A truck flew into the driveway. The passenger side door flung open before the truck was at full stop, and Shelley's feet were on the pavement just as fast. She waved at the driver and kind of jogged to the door wide-eyed. She reached the front door, turned and waved the truck off. She had her house key ready in the hand she wasn't waving with. She unlocked the door and slid inside the safety of the house. "Keep the lights off. Let's go upstairs," Shelley said as she locked the 2 deadbolts and the chain, not once looking at us. We headed up the stairs behind her. We walked into Bea's room and looked out the window down to the truck, still in park out front with the lights on, the engine running. As we all stared at the truck, Shelley told us of the ordeal she went through. Long story short, he had made reservations at the wrong restaurant, so he suggested they go buy some food and have a picnic-style dinner at a local park. Shelley didn't do well outdoors. She was an office woman, so she declined. However, he had just drove so long to get here, and then hit her with, "You kind of owe me." And Shelley said that made her feel bad knowing he drove 2 hours. So when he mentioned that he had a vacation home he could cook for her at close by, she agreed. She said they got to the house and it was nice enough, log cabin near Bethel, New York, only about 35 minutes from our town. Shelley said he kept talking about how easy it was to get her alone. He also kept saying he liked strong mummies because they have such fight, but she caved. This made her skin crawl. This wasn't the man she thought it was. Shelley then asked for a ride home due to her feeling ill. He wasn't the happiest, but complied and stopped cooking and started looking for the keys she knew he had in his pocket. He then started asking about our girls, referring to myself and Bea. This freaked Shelley out so bad she said she was going to get someone to get her, and that he didn't like. He found his keys instantly. Once they were out of the house and in the truck would not start, so they had to move to his work truck. Shelley was visibly shaken and wouldn't take her eyes off the truck in the driveway as she spilled the story out, post-haste. She said there was a garage that he said they had to walk around the house to hop into the work truck. She said she felt she had no choice but to play it cool and just agree to go. She hopped out and walked around the house, and there was indeed another garage, with a truck in it. The same truck that we were all currently staring at just sitting in the driveway. "It smelled like bleach and metal," Shelley whispered. She told us on the way home he just kept asking about us. What did we do that she didn't like? What got us spankings? What were the naughty things we got in trouble for? What would she do without us? And the one question to scare you out of your pants as a parent: would you sacrifice yourself for our girls? Shelley said she stared at him in awe and disbelief, and then he just laughed. She got more and more concerned as she noticed her surroundings in the back of the truck she was riding home in. There was what she thought were chains and a bucket sitting on a desk that was drilled into the floor, a duffel bag, and very large metal objects she wasn't too sure of. This is when he started to pull out pictures on his little flip phone that he had of us. He must have found Shelley's Facebook and took pictures of our pictures and had them on his phone, waving it around telling Shelley what a good, strong mommy she had been to us, and she should be proud of what she had accomplished. By this time they were pulling into the driveway and Shelley was done with his shit. She was just about finished when we saw the truck lights turn off. Shelley immediately picked up the phone and dialed the sheriff and told him quickly There was an unwelcome person outside our home. Being in such a small town, the sheriff not only went to school and graduated with Shelley, but only lived 3 doors down. Just as we see this guy getting out of his truck with the duffel bag, we saw the sheriff whip up behind him. This man panicked and literally threw his duffel bag into his truck and tried to back into the sheriff to get out. When he realized he was blocked from the rear, he went through the yard. We could not believe our eyes. The truck peeled out, taking some of the lawn with it. The sheriff came to the door to check on us and told us he had units down the road waiting for him. We all shared a good collective cry and rejoiced in our safety. It did, however, create some paranoia issues in the next couple of weeks due to the fact we didn't know how long he was in the house when he just let himself in. Did he put cameras anywhere? Did he mess with food in the house to hurt someone? I mean, it was bad, but we worked through it. We never heard anything about him getting caught, and we did occasionally receive eerie messages on Facebook, 2 of which we knew were him, but we put that out of our minds. I haven't heard anything from or about him since about 3 months after the incident, when the last message was received. It's been about 11 years since the incident, but we still talk about it when we can. So old dude from eHarmony, let's not meet ever again. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 3 True Scary Stories, episode 378. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Second time recording this thing. First time, I forgot what video I was making. No, actually, it's the 3rd time. First time I forgot what video I was making. Second time, I was the right series, but it was the wrong number. And 3rd time's a charm, so there we go. Lovely. You see, I always like to get my audio recorded, at least mostly recorded, if not all, on a Thursday. And while it's technically 20 to 2 in the morning on Friday, as far as my brain's concerned, it's Thursday because I haven't been to sleep yet. And I meant to start about 7 p.m. and I was just very comfy on the sofa, so it didn't happen. Anyway, I'm going to head off and continue on with these videos, recording in reverse order as usual, and that'll give me a lot less to do when I wake up tomorrow. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.